Hey everyone, it's Chase Elleby and Joel Williams from Williams Elleby coming to you today on a video why it's important to have a boots on the ground lawyer on your case. But before we get started, we just want to say thanks to everyone who's watched and called in and given us feedback. It's super helpful. We are people. We have a real law firm. If you want to call us, feel free to call us. 833-LEGAL-GA is the number that Shannon will put down there. But yeah, we really appreciate the feedback, so keep it coming. So Joel, why is it important to have a lawyer just kind of get into the nitty-gritty of a case?
Yeah, I think to start with, no matter what kind of case you have, it's very helpful to have a lawyer who's invested in your case. And by that I mean a lawyer that's willing to go to the scene of the fault, to do a scene inspection, to go to the scrapyard and inspect the vehicle, inspect anything that needs to be inspected, and actually not mind getting his or her hands dirty because believe it or not, there are some lawyers in our industry that sit in their tall office towers or sit behind their desk and never get out and talk to a witness or never get out and inspect a scene. But I feel like in most cases, not all cases,
Sure,
but in most cases, that's very helpful because the lawyer has then invested his or her time in the case and gotten their hands dirty and put their own eyes on it, and not relied on an investigator just to send them photographs. They can actually take in, for example, a car that's been wrecked. They go to the salvage yard, they're looking in it, they see, oh, there's a beer bottle in the bottom of the car.
I've had that happen.
Yeah, me too. Oh, I see this seatbelt is still latched or it's unlatched and whatever. You just get all these different things, or the tires on the car, oh, they're bald. All these different things kind of cement in your mind, and it helps me as a lawyer when I do it to determine, okay, well, maybe this isn't just a simple run-of-the-mill case. Maybe this is a case where I need to get an expert accident reconstructionist involved. Mm-hmm. Or maybe a tool falls from an overhead position. I need to go get an expert that can talk about the forces that are imparted on the body when that tool that weighs that amount hits somebody from a certain height or whatever. But if I'm just sitting behind my desk and relying on reports that I get from other people, there might be information that's missed. So I think that when you're in a situation where you need to hire a personal injury lawyer, if you're able to find one that doesn't mind getting his or her hands dirty and actually going to the scene or inspecting an object, it can and usually does add value to the case.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point earlier, it's not every case doesn't require having to go and investigate a scene or whatever that might be, because a lot of times it's like in a car wreck, for instance, it might be clear liability. So you're not really arguing over what happened. Everybody knows what happened. Mm-hmm. But if there is an issue with liability, if it's like a weird intersection or something like that, it's certainly helpful to go out there, take pictures, just kind of get a feel for what it is you're looking at. And also importantly, and you and I have worked on cases where this has happened, you go to a scene and that restaurant or that gas station, they have cameras. Let's go over there and find out if they actually happen to catch it. And you go and you talk to them and you get that information. Because a lot of times, depending on the extent of injuries, if the police are investigating a crash, they're not necessarily going to go to every single store around and ask for video. Now, if it's a really bad crash with bad injuries, they typically will, but most of the time they don't. Mm-hmm. So it's on the lawyer or an investigator, whoever, to go out there and try to find it. So it's very important to have a lawyer who can be proactive in doing that for the right type of case.
Yeah. And honestly, I'll tell you, man, I feel like as a lawyer, the more time that I have to personally spend on a case, the more I become personally invested in it, which means that case is probably going to get my A game. And that's one reason I'm a little bit different even from the outset with clients. If possible and when possible, I like to meet the client face to face before they hire us, because I want to make sure they're comfortable with me and that I'm comfortable with them. Right. But just that simple act of sitting down for an hour and having a face-to-face meeting, whether it's in our office or their house or at a Starbucks, it doesn't really matter. But just having that face-to-face meeting causes me to be more invested in the case. And I feel like my client is also more invested in me because we make a personal connection during that time. And so that train of thought extends to going out and, for example, we talked about inspecting property damage or inspecting a scene, but also going out and trying to find witnesses and talking to witnesses and getting recorded statements if needed, if the case calls for it, right? Because that's more time of mine that I'm putting into the case, which is going to either consciously or subconsciously cause me to be more committed to that case and more personally invested in it.
Yeah, exactly. And that, kind of reminds me of, again, cases that you and I have worked on where, negligent security cases, especially in Georgia, you have an apartment complex, someone gets shot, and you have to, establish evidence of prior notice for the property owner. So we've gone and knocked on doors, kind of showed up randomly at people's houses. Hey, I'm Chase, don't mean to startle you. But, getting down there and building rapport with witnesses, having them trust you, just like you need your client to trust you, you have to meet these witnesses, get them to trust you, and to help you out on cases as well. So it's super important to be able to do that.
Yeah, it's funny to me too, because the last time I did that was down at an apartment complex in South Atlanta, and I met the defense lawyer there because it was not a go find witness inspection. It was just let's go out to the scene, take some measurements, take some photographs, kind of put our eyes on the property and all that. And it was so obvious to me that the defense attorney was way outside of his game, because he's sweating bullets, he feels like a fish out of water, he doesn't know what to do while he's there. And I'm just digging around, taking pictures, hey, how's it going? Talking to people and all that.
Well, it brings up another good point too, is by doing that, it forces the other side to know that, one, you're taking it seriously, and two, sort of open their eyes to what, their exposure and their liability might be for that specific case. So,
yeah, and again, that was important too, because
right.
We're walking around, I'm like, hey man, you see that crack vial over there?
Right.
Look, there's another drug bag. Oh, there's a used condom on the ground right here. You see that? And
out in the open.
He had to put his eyes on it.
Yeah.
So, speaking of witnesses, there's different steps of the case, right? So we've got pre-suit, where we're just trying to figure out what happened. We've got depositions once the case has been filed, where we may be taking sworn testimony, and then we have trial. And some witnesses are going to be for our client, some witnesses are going to be against our client. Most of the time when we're deposing a witness, it's a witness that's against our client. But we don't necessarily always depose witnesses, and probably rarely depose witnesses that we know are going to be helpful for our client. We'll just save them for trial. But there's a lot of effort that can go into trying to figure out which witnesses are going to be best for trial. So you want to go through that process a little bit? So we've got a client with 20 before and after damages witnesses, and how you would narrow that down?
Yeah, and I think that, sort of goes to sort of building rapport with not only your client, but also the witnesses, and having a lawyer who's going to go and interview all those witnesses and try to figure out who is going to be the best to convey this information to a jury. Before and after witnesses are witnesses that you might call, maybe it's a neighbor, a friend, a spouse, a relative, whoever it might be, that's going to testify about how you were before a certain incident or injury and how you are after, right? So those can be super, super important witnesses to convey to the jury what your damages might be. So in talking to those witnesses, you have to make sure that they, one, just are okay talking to 12 strangers, right? Because a lot of it is getting up in, on the stand and talking to folks. If people don't like speaking to crowds, get nervous in front of crowds, probably not a good witness. You might have them on the phone, they might be fantastic, tell you everything you want to know, but if they can't present that information in a way that's going to be compelling to the jury, no good.
Yeah. I think you and I have both seen witnesses that look like deer in the headlights.
Yeah, but we've also had witnesses who look like deer in headlights, and you're like, oh man, we're gonna go to trial and it's gonna be bad, and then they just flip a switch and that was fantastic. They really turned it on. So you don't really know, but it's super important to vet those witnesses. So you have the before and after witnesses that are important for trial, but then you also have those hostile witnesses that are helpful, but they have zero interest in showing up to trial or being there. So that can be a little dicey, because you want to be nice and accommodating, but you also have the power of a subpoena where they don't have a choice but to show up, and to try to sort of tiptoe the line of being the nice guy, but also being, hey, you have to show up. I know you want to be here, but here's your subpoena. I don't want to send the sheriff after you. So
yeah, I think that's about it. I'll just say this: it's always funny to me when I see lawyer advertisements. because they like go across the entire gamut, right? Like
Right.
you've got some fools out there like with their money gun shooting it all over the place.
Right.
I'm like, that's not impressive to me. What is impressive to me is lawyer advertisements, and they're not even advertisements, they're just usually social media posts or whatever, where a lawyer is at the scene. They've got a drone, they're out there with their accident reconstruction crew, they're gathering all this evidence, getting ready to present their, get everything they need to put their client's case in the best light. So, if don't know a law firm, I mean, obviously if I'm hurt, I'm probably going to hire you.
Right.
Because I know you.
Right.
But if I'm not in that position, one thing I'd probably look for is, lawyers that have that proven track record, and then not brag, but have a social presence that shows, hey, I'm not afraid to get my hands dirty. I'm not afraid to put my boots on the ground and get out there and work and gather the evidence that I need to win my client's case.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
You got anything else about those boots on the ground?
No, let's get some good sturdy boots.
All right, good deal. Well, I'll give you a little preview for a few weeks out. We're going to have a special guest. It's a good friend of Chase and mine. His name's Darrell Champion. I guess he'd be a competitor, but more importantly, he's a friend and he's a good lawyer in our area. That's going to come to us and talk about bringing claims against the government. So if you ever have any interest or need to sue the government, then stay tuned. In a few weeks, we'll have that video out for you that'll give you some expert tips on what you need to know before you sue the government. But otherwise, thanks for being with us today. If you wouldn't mind, if you are not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe, hit that like button. Any more questions, just put it in the comment section below and we'll do our best to respond to it. But other than that, we'll see you next week.